We believe that everything in life relates to gun training, and everything in gun training relates to life. Join us as we explore the Defender's lifestyle through the lens of self-improvement. Welcome to Defenders Live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Defenders Live. I am your host, Laura Thorson, and I'm so glad to be back live this week. We've had a couple weeks where we had to do pre-recorded broadcasts for various reasons, and man, it's okay, but it's just not the same. Am I right? So I'm so glad to be back with you guys tonight, and I'm excited about bringing our special guest to you, Tiffany Johnson of Citizen Safety Academy. But before we bring her on, hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in tonight. I want to hear from you. So shout out in the comments where you're watching from. If you're watching this on a replay, I want to welcome you as well. Or if you're new and you've never been with us before. As always, Adam Winch, the founder of Defenders USA, is helping us behind the scenes. He might pop in, but probably not tonight. His internet connection's not doing so well. He is in a training again. The dude trains all the time. So the internet connection for him is not so good tonight. But speaking of Adam Winch, I want to give you a quick message about our friends and sponsors.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen, Adam Winch with Defenders USA. I want to tell you about some of our friends and sponsors. I'm a brand ambassador with H&K Firearms. I carry a VP9 from H&K in Defensive Life. I use it on the range. I use it in training. This is my go-to gun. I highly recommend the VP9 from H&K. Next, Iron American. You can see this bottle here or the one that's hanging off my range bag in front of the camera. That's what I use for liquid chalk on the range. There's also a discount code through Defenders USA that you can get some, and I'd strongly encourage you to order some liquid chalk from Iron America. Next, my gun is carried in a Haven Defense Co. holster. You can find them at havendefenseco.com. Haven Defense Co. You can see their brown leather patch on the front of the bag. And then, of course, there's a Defenders USA patch. You can come to training and try to earn that patch, too, from Defenders USA.
So tonight, guys, we're going to be having a live Q&A at the end of the broadcast. So be thinking about questions for Tiffany as we go along here. Drop those in the comments at any time, and we'll be putting those in our special little box so that we have all of those questions handy towards the end of the live. So don't be afraid to drop those in the comments. And feel free, of course, to banter back and forth while we're doing the broadcast. We love hearing from you. So let's check out where everybody's watching from tonight. I see some familiar names. Let's see. I don't know how to say this. Prepperines from Colorado. I see you come on here from time to time. Thank you so much for coming back. It looks like Heather is in Utah tonight rather than Arizona. Heather, I'm so glad that you're watching. Thank you. And Catherine, Lynn and Catherine from Arizona are back as well. So thank you so much for joining us. And Adam, I think he's the one that shouted out from Arizona. And Kara from Arkansas, thank you for coming back and being with us tonight. So looking forward to introducing our special guest, but I do have a tidbit of the week this week. So many of you know that I was out of town, and that's why everything was pre-recorded last week. I was doing some really important training in South Dakota with some amazing people from Active Self-Protection. And so my tidbit kind of ties in with that just a little bit. And it's more maybe of a fun one tonight. So hang with me for just a minute before we bring Tiffany on. The tidbit of the week is called Hokey Pokey. Do you guys remember doing the hokey pokey dance when you were a kid? You put your left foot in and you put your left foot out. You shake it all about, turn around, do the whole hokey pokey dance, right? We all know what that is. So I learned about a practice from John Correa this past weekend that really helped me reset and recalibrate my nervous system while I was on the line, because I'm not sure I've been under that much pressure in quite some time. And I just wanted to quickly share that with you. But I also want to more than that, expand on that concept in another way that I think might help you in your shooting and in your everyday life. So, shout out in the comments here when you're extremely stressed out. What do you do to try to manage your nervous system in real time? Do you try to take a deep breath? Do you have a mantra that you run in your head? What do you focus on mentally? For me, I typically have a shake it out dance. So, if you're on the Facebook group, the Defenders Live Facebook group, I think I posted one of my shakeout dances on there before, so you may have seen it. But the reason I do that is because my hands feel like they're buzzing with energy whenever I get on the line. So I have to shake them out to get that energy out. And in the past, that practice had worked for me pretty well enough at least in the past. But when I got to this particular situation with these super high end shooters, last weekend, it wasn't doing the trick. And so suddenly I'm on the line with John Correa, and my go-to practice is no longer doing the trick, and my nervous system was at an all-time high. And so I actually got agitated. I mean, it was really with myself, but I was outwardly agitated, and that reflected in my tone of voice and my speech and everything else. But John picked up on this and he redirected me to do one simple thing. He asked me to turn myself around on the line, which he calls the hokey pokey. Like literally, just turn yourself around. And I thought that was insane. Like, how could that help me calm down? But I did it anyway. And I did it, turned myself around, and I reset my nervous system. Was surprisingly able to refocus, and there's science behind why that works. And I have to read up on that. I'm on a steep learning curve right now with lots of things that I'm learning, and I'm sharing them with you as I learn them. But if you know what that is, or if you have a book recommendation regarding that, drop that in the comments so we all can see that, because I'm sure this isn't new to some of you. But anyway, John was very observant of my state. He recognized that what I was trying wasn't working. He simply redirected me towards something else that might help. And John, if you're watching, I just want to say thank you for that, because that hokey pokey dance really helped me. And so, with that being said, I want you guys to go back now and think about the hokey pokey dance again. Now, do you remember the other part of the hokey pokey dance besides turning yourself around? It's the part where you put your left foot in and your left foot out, okay? And I was thinking about that part a little bit more today, and I thought of it in another way. And maybe this will be a lesson for all of us tonight. How many times in your life or in your mind do you do the equivalent of putting your left arm in and then taking your left arm out? Meaning, are you going back and forth? Are you unsure or undecided? This could be in life or under stress on the range. Perhaps you've got a plan right up until you step on the line, and then all of a sudden you may start to doubt your plan or yourself and you mentally retreat. So you're kind of like, you're all in, and then all of a sudden you get scared maybe and retreat. Or maybe it's a lack of consistency. Do you have a tendency to be fully committed or very back and forth? It might depend on the task, right? So think about that. Do you get scared when you get to a place you're not sure of and you retreat or pull back? Or do you lean in and allow yourself to be uncomfortable? So be honest with yourself when you think about this. So in life, I think that that aspect of the hokey pokey dance can be detrimental, while exposing yourself to new things in an incremental way can be an excellent and necessary strategy. It can also turn into an excuse to not fully commit, because we as humans really love to be comfortable and we really don't like to be vulnerable. But comfortable is not where it's at. So I want you to consider the times when leaning into that uncomfortable and staying there for just a little bit might be the key to growing into the person you were meant to be. So think about those times when you've been uncomfortable and hokey pokeyed your way out of it, like touching a hot stove, and now consider leaning in instead of staying in a small bit of uncomfortableness, and see what kind of growth happens. And then, just like the hokey pokey, when you're all done, turn yourself around and try it all again and realize that's what it's all about. See what I did there? Oh man, jokes. I'm probably the only one laughing at my jokes right now, but I love the ending of that. That was great. All right, let's move on to our special guest tonight. I know you guys are all looking forward to hearing from Tiffany, and I am too. So, really quickly, Tiffany underwent a 180-degree conversion in the world of firearms later on in her life. She grew up subscribing to common fears and misconceptions about guns and gun owners. After college, she reluctantly enrolled in a Rangemaster handgun safety class, and she was hooked. Her interests and training have expanded from handguns to shotguns and carbines, in addition to being mentored by Tom and Lynn Gibbons and other Rangemaster instructors. Tiffany has also trained under Jim Higginbotham, John Farnham, Craig Douglas, Masad Ayub, and many other respected veterans of the self-defense community. So I'm going to bring Tiffany on, and I think there's a couple other things we want to share about Tiffany, but I'll let her do that. Tiffany, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you for having me. Although now I'm totally distracted by the hokey pokey joke and it's in my head and I really don't want to talk about anything else but hokey pokey. So thank
I
you for
know
that.
it's kind of silly, but there was some truth to it. And I thought, why not have a little bit of fun, right?
That was great. Well done.
Yeah, yeah, good stuff. So I want to hear more about your story into your journey into firearms, but I do also want you, if you could, please touch on what we talked about earlier about the lawyer thing, that you're a lawyer. Like you have so many talents and skills to offer. So take it away, fill in the gaps here of where I missed.
Well, thanks. I think you put it in the most flattering light possible. The flip side to that coin is, I guess you could say, I still haven't figured out what I want to be when I grow up, because I've spent many years as a teacher. I taught everything from middle school to graduate school. I am a lawyer. I've been practicing law for 20 years. Well, I've been licensed to practice law for 20 years. I practiced for about 15, and then I transitioned out of traditional practice, and now I work for a legal research company. But I'm technically housed in the marketing department, so I guess you could also call me a marketing professional.
Wow, that's a lot of hats.
So it's kind of all over the map, and we haven't even gotten to guns yet. So that's the short
Oof.
version of what I do in my copious amounts of spare time.
That was a joke. Okay. All right, so let's get into some of now you had some passions that we talked about. We're gonna weave all of those passions in to the conversation tonight. But how about to start off, let's talk more about the legal aspect of things, because you said there were some common misconceptions that newer shooters come in with. So let's talk about those commonly asked questions and how you can address some of those.
Wow. Well,
Where
there
do you
are,
begin, right?
yeah, where do we begin? I think maybe one of the most frequent misconceptions that I see touted by instructors has to do with immunity for righteous defensive shootings. And I just wish that folks would go one extra step and add the caveat to that, because yes, many jurisdictions do offer civil and criminal, some jurisdictions criminal immunity for justified self-defense shootings. But I think it's irresponsible for instructors to just say that and leave it at that, because even if there is an immunity statute in your jurisdiction, you still have to go to court and claim that immunity, and you still have to convince a judge that you're due that immunity. And so, yes, you may end up not having to face civil liability, but that's 2 years and $100,000 later. So so
Right.
immunity is a little more complicated. I always fear that some instructors give the misconception that, if it's a clear cut case of self-defense, that, you will be automatically repelled magnetically from the
Mhm.
courthouse steps, and that there's, anybody who tries to sue you, the court clerks are going to say, no, we can't accept that lawsuit. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. If you've got your
Right.
filing fee, I can sue you, Laura, for wearing a cap. And
Mhm.
they will take my money. They will file my case. You will get served with the papers. You'll have to show up to court and say this is ridiculous, and then let the judge rule on that. It doesn't just
Mhm.
go away on its own. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
one pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, that makes sense because also that's going to require time and money, and I think that a lot of people maybe they just don't think things through all the way, and that can be really unfortunate for somebody that's really not planning ahead. And that's part of what we talk about is planning and preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. But if you don't
Absolutely.
prepare, you could find yourself in a really bad situation in many ways. So
It's
are
true. Mhm.
yeah. Is there anything else that's very common?
Yeah, let's see. The hammer and nail phenomenon is
Mm,
pretty common. I am always leery of folks who get comfortable carrying a gun and then don't carry anything else and don't bother to sharpen any of the other tools in their tool chest, including their mind.
yeah.
So bottom line, if you end up going to guns in a defensive situation, you've missed countless opportunities to avoid that situation already. You've made a number of mistakes in order to get there. 99 times out of 100, that is the case. So, anybody who endeavors to carry a firearm, which is your absolute right, I think it also comes with the responsibility to educate and train yourself on all the different ways that you can and should, in my opinion, avoid having to ever use that firearm in the first place. If
Amen.
you're carrying a gun and you're not carrying pepper spray, there's a disconnect there, for
Mhm.
example. If you're
Mhm.
not working on your verbal agility, to use a Craig Douglas phrase, if you're not working on your social fluency and your ability to kind of socially duck and weave and get out of precarious situations or not get into them in the first place. If you're not
Mhm.
working on those social skills, then you're essentially just waiting on the opportunity to shoot somebody, and
Mhm.
that's not a healthy mindset for anybody within arm's reach of a gun.
Oh, man, everybody said you would be awesome. It's true. I mean, this girl's awesome, preaching to the choir. I love it. I love it. Thank you for saying that. Really,
Thank you.
truly. Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not
Okay.
the only one.
No, you are not the only one. So, as instructors, we have a huge responsibility to give out the best information we possibly can, to be practicing what we preach in every way. And we both have a passion, I believe, for the instructor community, and feeling as though at times there are gaps there that need to be filled. So, if you have any other legal stuff you want to talk about in the moment, please go ahead with that. But if you don't have anything else in that regard, let's move on to your passion for helping develop better instructors. I mean, and your thoughts behind that.
Yeah, I absolutely love instructor development training. And more specifically, I love working with instructors who are going to be working with brand new shooters.
Mm,
That's my lane. That's my passion. I absolutely love working with brand new shooters. And so does Akil Kadir, my training partner, and who is the owner and founder of Citizen Safety Academy. We love working with folks to get them prepared to hopefully move on and take further classes with somebody like an Adam Winch or somebody like a Tom Gibbons. But
mhm,
there is such a huge target market of folks who are not quite ready for those classes. And they need a place to train where the on ramp into the training community is safe and encouraging and welcoming and conducive to motivation for further training. Uh,
mhm,
and that's where Akil and I focus in our instructor development. So we teach not only how to teach, because there's a lot of folks who teach how to teach, but we also teach specifically how to teach people who know nothing about guns, people who don't agree with your political stance, people who are completely different from you in background, in way of life, in shape, size, color, people who have nothing in common with you but this gun training thing that they are curious about.
Mhm.
people who may be terrified of guns, who are there for reasons other than any of the reasons that you maybe got started working
Mhm.
with guns.
Mhm.
We love working with people who have phobias, people who have physical limitations, people who have emotional and psychological triggers or
Mhm.
past trauma. Any of those obstacles or potential barriers, that's our sweet spot. We love welcoming those students and helping them reach their goals. And well, first helping them figure out honestly what their goals are, because a lot of
Yeah.
people skip that question or take it
Mhm.
for granted. And then once we establish the goals, then helping them reach their goals. That's the stuff of dreams to me. And we love
Yeah.
working with those students and also working with instructors who aspire to work with students like that.
Yeah, definitely, because, those newer people coming in are they can be intimidated and scared away very easily if they're not handled properly. So, do you have any particular, ways or I don't know what the right word is, but, philosophies perhaps that you use, in working with new shooters?
Sure. Well, there's a ton, and we've got a whole 2-day class on it, which only scratches the surface. But I guess that's my segue to a shameless plug. Gateway Instructor Development Certification course.
Yes.
If you're interested in learning more about this, or if you go to our website, which thank you so much, Laura, you've been flashing it on the screen. If you go to citizensafety.com and look at our information on Gateway Instruction, you can see a lot more about it. But some of the key points are things like check your politics at the door, check religion at the door. Don't make any assumptions about your students. And this is one that's really easy to agree with theoretically, but most instructors have no idea how often they're violating that principle in practice. So one example I will out myself for failing in that regard. And one example that sticks out where I made an assumption about a student and I shouldn't have done that is when Akil and I were teaching sight alignment, we referred to a poster on the wall that had an image of a handgun, and it was a profile image. It showed the side of the gun. And we pointed to the rear sight, pointed to the front sight, and we talked about how you have to align them. And a student of ours reluctantly raised her hand, and essentially she did not understand how that was supposed to happen in physical space. The two
Mm.
sights are attached to the slide. We can't move them. How are you going to align them? Well, she was missing the fact that even though this image is in profile, in reality, in 3D space, we're going to be standing behind the gun.
Mhm.
And so, what we're talking about is your vantage point from standing behind the gun, not your
Mhm.
vantage point from looking at the side of the gun. Now, anybody who hears me tell that story, if you're thinking, what an idiot, then you're you're making assumptions about your student. It's
Yeah.
actually not an idiotic notion at all, because it was our mistake for referencing this profile image of the firearm and taking for granted that the student knows, well, in real life, we're going to turn the thing. We shouldn't have taken that for granted. And it was
Yeah.
our fault. It wasn't the student's fault. So it's something that takes 2 seconds to avoid and three
Mhm.
seconds to fix. So it's
Mhm.
not a big deal, not a whole lot of skin off anybody's back. But imagine if that student had not had the courage to ask that question.
Yeah, that's what I was
She
just thinking.
she
Good
would have
thing she
gotten
asked.
exactly, and
Yeah.
if she's the one out of however many who asked, then who knows how many didn't ask in all of
Mhm.
our years of teaching, and now they
Mhm.
didn't figure this out until we got on the range with guns in hands, and so that's suboptimal, shall we say. So that's just one example of how you really do have to see your students as a blank slate, but also do that without condescending and without
Mhm.
judging them or looking down
Mhm.
on them. And that can be a tricky balancing act unto itself. Those are just a few that come to mind, but there's a whole lot of strategies and techniques that we talk about in our gateway instruction class that we hope really help people make more breakthroughs with beginner students, whereas
Mhm.
these little niceties might not necessarily be as pivotal in a class with more advanced shooters.
Right, definitely. And you've got an AI, an assistant instructor online class, is that correct? Could you talk more about that as well?
Yeah, so funny story behind that. My journey as an instructor started out in the AI world. I come from a school where apprenticeship is still king. Um, Back when I was learning all of this stuff, you wouldn't dream of taking a class and getting a piece of paper and then hanging out a shingle and starting
Yeah.
to teach. We apprenticed for years, and so
Mhm.
I was an AI for Tom Givens at Rangemaster for years before I ever even dreamt of stepping out in front of a class. And I thought that the the inner workings of the AI job were kind of universal. Like I thought this is how everybody does it. And it wasn't until I
Mhm.
started working with the keel that I realized that most people don't get any training on how to be effective in the AI world. He said to me, he's like, you got to realize that your upbringing with Tom Givens is very atypical. And it was
Mhm.
another thing that I took for granted, if I'm being honest. And so I started working with our crew at Citizen Safety Academy. Akil and I took what I learned from Tom, and we codified it, and we packaged it into a curriculum and used it for in-service training for anybody who is going to work the range under the banner of Citizen Safety Academy. And everybody, it was sort of people's eyes were opened and people learned things, and it was really, really effective. And then we did it at TACCon, and then we did it at the Rangemaster Instructor Reunion, and it just really kind of took off. Everybody was very receptive to the content. But since it's not usually a live fire class, it's not as I don't know, it's hard to make the numbers work overhead wise if to take
Mhm.
a class like that on the road. So
Yeah.
we kept getting requests. Can you do the AI class? Can you do the AI class? But it's just not, it's a hard class to take on the road. So we decided to try and do it as a webinar, and I didn't think it would sell. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, it got put on the back burner for about a year while Akil kept saying, "You need to do it. You need to do it." And I was like, "Nobody's going to sign up." Well, we posted it and it sold out, and we actually had to change our Zoom subscription to
Wow,
allow
that's
more
awesome.
attendees. Yeah, and we raised the cap, and it was great. And so that was a live webinar, just happened in January, and we recorded all three sessions as a three-part webinar. And so now those recordings are available on our online training hub, which is citizensafetyonline.com. And you can purchase it as a video class now. That's a recording of the
Ooh, that's awesome. So when's the next live one?
live.
Asking for a friend.
I don't know. You'll have to ask Akil. I
Okay.
heard a rumor that he may be a guest on the show.
I
Maybe
heard
I'll
that
have
rumor
to.
too.
But,
Okay.
yeah, you should definitely ask him. I think it's probably something we will bring back. Again, I was really surprised at how well received it was. Super excited about that. Even still thinking about it, it just
That's
makes me
great.
really.
That means it's needed, Tiffany.
I think
Yeah.
so. I think
Yeah.
maybe I had a blind spot for it. I don't know, but Akil's been saying that for a while. Like, this is really good stuff. I thought that people would see it as kind of, well, this is stuff I already know.
Mm,
But it wasn't. The feedback that we've gotten is that, there are some folks who are familiar with the concepts, but others who are like, I never thought about any of this stuff, and I'm going to take this back to my home range, and we're going to incorporate this. So it was really, I'm really excited about how well received it's been so far, and
I'm
kudos to
glad to hear
Akil
that.
for pushing me and helping me to get that off the ground. I'm glad it went well.
That's great. Hey, I just realized there was a whole part there towards the beginning, Tiffany, that I wanted to kind of not deep dive into, but a part of your introduction was that you haven't always been a firearms person. And I'm always so curious about people's stories. I love people's stories. So, would you share that with us? I would love to learn more about how that came about.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So I don't know if I would call myself anti-gun, but I was definitely fearful of guns. I did not grow up around guns, did not come up in a pro-gun household. Um, but instead, I experienced a lot of, not a lot, but a couple of pivotal tragedies in my life that
Mm,
all involved firearms. And so either firearms or alcohol or both. And so I abstained from both. I've never had
mhm,
a drop of alcohol a day in my life, and I said I don't want anything to do with guns.
mhm,
But guns, alcohol I could avoid easily, not a big deal. Guns were everywhere, and they were just, I just felt like I was being pelted by this kind of fear that I
mm,
couldn't escape. So I signed up for a class one day, and I'm not really sure if it was a bucket list, face your fears kind of thing, or if I was trying to sort of arm myself with some talking points against guns. I certainly know that if I don't like having an opinion about something that I can't back up.
mm.
So I knew that I did not like guns, but I was uncomfortable with the fact that I couldn't articulate why
Why?
I didn't
Yeah.
like guns. So that's why I
Mhm,
wanted to take a class so I could talk the talk, walk the walk, use the lingo, sound educated, and speak intelligently about why guns are bad. Okay. That, and I also wanted to kind of face my fear. And
yeah.
like you said in the intro, it was not at all what I expected. In that 1 8-hour class, it was just a permit class. I was completely converted. I walked away embarrassed by
Mm.
all of the misconceptions that I had entertained, and absolutely thirsty for more. And I signed up for the next level class that night. And it was just by sheer dumb luck that the range that I walked into was Range Master. I had no idea who
Oh my
Tom
gosh, your
Cruise was.
first class was Range
My
Master?
first class was
Oh
with
my
Tom
gosh.
Cruise. So, and I didn't understand the importance of that until much later. I had no
Sure.
idea that Tom was a nationally renowned trainer. He was just the guy, some dude at the range down the street from my house.
Yeah, it was just the closest person.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right.
Wow,
So,
that's really, really cool.
and I'll
And
just
s
add one
Yeah,
more
go
quick
ahead.
thing to that, if you don't mind. You
Yeah.
mentioned that I wasn't always a gun person. Again, I have to give credit to Akil for helping me realize this, but I remain, I think, not a gun person. And I want to explain what I mean by that. I know a lot of people who really enjoy guns, enjoy the machinery, the engineering, the history. It's a
Mhm,
hobby for them. And that's not me. Guns
mhm,
are a means to an end for me.
mhm,
I have zero attachments to my guns. They are tools. I feel as, as much affinity for my gun as I do for my hammer or my ladder or my screwdriver.
mhm.
And if they get the job done, then I keep them. If they don't get the job done, I get rid of them and get a better one. And if somebody invents a tool that does a better job of helping me level the playing field in terms of how I fulfill my obligation to be a good steward of the time and space that I've been granted on this earth, then I'll switch to that tool. But until that day, I'm using guns, and that's the only reason I have guns.
Fair enough. I love that. I've never heard anybody say it that way before. Yeah, that makes sense. So, one of the things that we talked about earlier today, and this is the title of the live tonight, is that the Second Amendment is for everyone. So, tell me what you mean by that, Tiffany.
So that's not mine. That is from my good friend Tony Simon. And shout out to Tony. And if you're not familiar with Tony's Second Amendment is for everyone in the diversity shoot, definitely look him up. Absolutely worthwhile. But the Second Amendment is for everyone is a concept that simply articulates the fact that self-preservation is a right that we all have, regardless of who we are, what we believe.
Mhm,
A lot of times, I spend time explaining to folks who are averse to the Second Amendment that the Second Amendment is just a codification. It's just words on paper that record natural law. So whether we have the Second Amendment or not, we still each as sentient beings, as humans, have the right to self-preserve. And I would argue we have the obligation, I mentioned that earlier, to self-preserve. So the Second Amendment is merely a codification of the availability of one tool towards that end. So it is for everybody. And the reason I think that distinction, the fact that it's a mere codification as opposed to the creation of a right, the reason I think that's important is because, frankly, the law, the Second Amendment, was not originally penned to apply to everyone. I mean, not everybody was a citizen back then. And the Second Amendment was definitely meant to only apply to citizens. You need only read case law to know that. So I can't, I don't want anybody to think that just because the original authors of the Second Amendment, or at least some of them anyway, didn't intend for it to apply to people who look like me. That means nothing to me in terms of my right to protect myself. And so the Second Amendment is for everyone because it is simply a record of natural law that existed since the beginning of time.
That makes sense. Man, you're so well spoken. I wish I could take some of that. Could you rub some of that off on me? I would love that.
I already told you how nervous I am, so
Oh my
don't
gosh.
say that. You're gonna make me start shaking even more.
I don't believe it for a minute. I know I keep kind of going back and forth here, and I hope that's okay. But and hey guys, by the way, we're getting towards the end here. We're wrapping up. I'd say in the next 10 or so minutes, we're going to be getting into the Q&A session. So if there are any questions that are popping up in your mind, if you want to ask Tiffany anything, put that in the comments, and we'll get to those here pretty shortly. I want to get into Tiffany really quickly because you do work with newer shooters a lot. And I do too. We both have that in common. And I have such a passion for new shooters. I have a heart for new shooters. Like I'm literally going to get emotional talking about it.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm the same way.
they are my people.
Yeah.
And
I
I
totally
develop bonds
understand.
and relationships with those people, and I see them grow from where from day one where they first came in, and I try to help support them even after they're a student of mine, because they become more than students. I think, I don't know, but anyway, I'm not going to talk about me, but you get what I'm saying, right?
I
You get what I'm
totally get what you're
saying.
saying. Yes.
So I want to reach out to any of you if you are a newer shooter, or you're thinking about coming to a class, but you're not sure where to start or what to do. You're nervous. What are some things, maybe Tiffany, that you could offer someone like that? Are there any questions they should ask before they come into a class to help assess whether or not that's the place for them? What should they keep in their mind if they're attending one of these classes? Just anything you can do to help those newer shooters coming in.
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, of course, as you know, it's going to depend largely on the personality of the student.
Yeah.
Some folks don't need a whole lot. They're kind of in it for whatever they get, and they'll take whatever happens. Those folks don't need to do quite as much vetting. But for folks who are more likely to be greatly affected by all of the little nuances and idiosyncrasies of human interaction that are, separate from and aside from the actual instruction, you will want to do your homework. If you're that type who is distracted by, I just don't get a good vibe from this person, or I can't understand this person's accent, or this person's laugh is annoying, little things like that that seem random and unsubstantiated, you have every right to be choosy about your very, very first experience as a student in a firearms class, because the more distractions you have, the less bandwidth you have left over for focusing on safety and learning good, solid introductory technique. Our
Mhm.
cognitive bandwidth is zero sum. So there is no such thing as, well, let me just crank out some more bandwidth. You can't, whatever's there is there.
I
All
wish
right.
that was a thing.
I know, I wish it were too, but it's like money in the bank,
Yep.
you can spend and spend, but at some point the checks start to bounce. And so
Mhm.
you want to clear as much space for learning and for absorbing new information as possible. So if you can, before that first class, do as much as you can to get a feel for the personality of the instructor, and be honest with yourself about whether you think your personalities mesh.
Mhm.
And don't judge yourself for feeling leery. It's not, it's perfectly okay for you to say, I have no idea why I don't want to train with this person. I just don't. Think of it, it's no different from dating or picking a doctor or a therapist. We've all had that feeling where we go to the doctor or the dentist and we're like, I just don't like the bedside manner. You don't have to have a formal complaint against the person. If it doesn't feel right, you've got the great thing about being a new entrant into the training world is you've got infinite options. I mean, within your limits of geography and resources and that sort of thing, but you can pick whoever you want for your first date, as it were. So
Mhm.
I like to tell folks to go to websites, go to YouTube channels, get a feel for the person's personality. Don't just read static text on a screen. If a
Mhm.
person's website has no pictures and no videos, maybe consider that person a second choice. Go
Mhm.
somewhere where you can actually hear a person speak, where that instructor is looking you in the eye through a video, or where there's a phone number listed where you can call and have a conversation. And then if you do that, maybe ask the instructor, hey, who's the last person you trained with? You don't even have to be prepared to recognize the names that trainer throws out. But if you ask somebody who's the last person you trained with, and either they don't know, they can't tell you, or they refuse to tell you, or they're offended by the question, that's a
Mhm.
red flag.
That tells you
Okay.
a lot right there. Yeah.
That tells you a lot. It's a red flag. So
Yep.
if you call someone that you're considering training with and they give you the sense that you are annoying them or are a burden to them or
Mhm.
taking up their time, you have no obligation to excuse that. Okay. You can
Mhm.
absolutely take that as a warning flag and maybe bump that option down lower on your list of first choices, because first impressions are a thing. And
Yeah, they are.
the vast majority, I don't know, Laura, I would guess probably 95% of people who take a first class, that's the only class they ever take.
Mhm.
So I certainly don't encourage that. Continue
Mhm.
training, but your chances of continuing training are much greater if you have a positive experience that first time. So I would suggest, if you're considering it, take advantage of every possible opportunity to maximize that experience. And you do have a lot more power than you think you do to affect that.
Yeah, and that reminds me of something else that we talk about in self-defense, which is trust your gut, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes,
Trust your
don't
gut.
start
Mm,
rationing away those gut instincts. Just trust them. They are embedded in you through your lineage for millions of years. Trust
mhm.
them.
Mhm. Amen to that. And so before we wrap up here with Tiffany and Q&A, Tiffany, I just want to give you an opportunity to speak to anything that you feel might help people that's coming up, like classes or a webinar or any of that. Is there anything you'd like to share with our audience regarding those things before we get into Q&A?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. So I mentioned earlier our gateway instruction class. It is my, i- it's just my absolute joy. I love that class, and we have a couple of them on the schedule. So if you're interested in learning more about gateway instruction, please consider signing up for one of those classes at citizensafety.com. You can just click on calendar or click on the about tab to read more about what we mean by gateway instruction. Um, Laura,
And those are in person
yes, those are in person.
in
Yes.
Tennessee. Are you in Tennessee?
I'm in Tennessee, but
Okay.
we take that class on the road. So
Okay.
we have one in Florida, one in Texas, one in Tennessee, and we're open to hosting. If anybody wants to bring us out, we'd be happy to come to you. Um,
Okay.
for sure. So that's Gateway. The other thing is I have to give a shout out to Akil Kadir, who is now teaching combative pistol on behalf of Rangemaster. That's Tom's curriculum. And Tom has authorized Akil to teach it. And so he's now booked up throughout 2023 all over the country with the combative pistol class. Like I said, it's a Rangemaster class, but Akil is bringing the good old CSA spin to it. So it's a wonderful
Oh,
class.
awesome.
It just debuted a couple of weeks ago. Consider that. And then Laura mentioned earlier the online training that we offer. And I will admit that we were slow to embrace online training as a company. CSA was, and I know that the training community writ large has been slow to embrace it. But I'm a huge fan of online training, and I think it absolutely has a place in the firearms training community. So citizensafetyonline.com is our web-based training hub, and there are free classes there. So if you're on the fence about online training with regard to self-defense, you can sign up for one of the free classes. We even have some classes that have no sign up at all. It's just pure video. You don't have to register or anything. You can just watch and get a sense for what the online classes are like. And and we invite you to send us an email if you have any questions about any of that.
Good stuff, man. I'm excited. That's great.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to put that out there.
Well, of course. I want as many people helped as I can possibly reach with good people like you doing the work, because we all need to be doing as much as we can, in my opinion, to reach people and do good work. So let's see what we've got here for Q&A. Oh, I think you already answered this one. I would like to hear her story about her journey of being not a gun person and how she came to where she is now. So I think that's asked and answered. So I think we'll move on from that one, Catherine. Hopefully we answered that question for you. Here's one. What legal preparations do you advise for gun owners, CCW holders to do to prepare for the huge aftermath of a defensive gun use? And what do you recommend people consider or need to know before being a constant CCW carrier?
Great questions. So I always talk to people about being honest with themselves about whether or not it's in their constitution to take a life. And I want to make sure that it's clear that I am by no means suggesting that you should look forward to taking a life, or you should intend to take a life, or want to take a life, or anything along those lines. Quite the contrary. If you're going to carry a gun, then I think you have an extra added obligation to bend over backwards and move mountains and do whatever you possibly can to avoid having to use that firearm. However, the only reason you strap a gun to your body is because, as Tom Gibbons would say, you might have to shoot somebody. And we hope it doesn't happen, but that's the only reason we put on a gun, is because we might have to use it. So you have to be honest with yourself in advance about whether or not that's in you. And if it's not, this is a huge pet peeve of mine. If it's not, that's okay. That's totally fine. It drives me insane when instructors shame people who have any hesitation about hurting other humans or taking a life, or if you don't know if that's part of, if you how you would handle that, then there are other options. Let's talk about how best to prepare for going out into the world without carrying a gun. If you think you will hesitate when you need to use a gun for self-defense, then that gun may be doing you more harm than good. It may be
I totally
creating
agree.
more,
Yeah.
yeah, it may be jeopardizing your safety more than it's securing it. So we need to talk about other options. So that's one thing that I say as far as preparing to be a concealed carrier. You have to look yourself in the mirror, be honest with yourself, and ask yourself that question: do I have it in me? But then you also need to be really think about the realities of the aftermath. So, what all does it entail? Every bullet that leaves your gun is attached to a whole bunch of different things: lawyers, bank accounts. There's all kinds of stuff that comes along with that: potential social ostracization, possibly fallout at your job. Any of those things might happen, and some of that we've seen happen to people that we know on the big stage, in full public view.
Mhm.
So you want to at least have given some thought to all of that beforehand. There are plenty of people who have had to defend themselves with a firearm and won the fight, but nobody wants to be in their shoes for their subsequent life, which it can be a disaster. So
Mhm.
again, there's a lot to balance there, and I don't want to discourage anybody from carrying. That's absolutely not my intent here. All I'm saying is that if you're going to carry, just understand that there's more to it than putting a gun on. You have a responsibility to train. You have a responsibility to be safe. You have a responsibility to secure that firearm when it's not on your body, because you're responsible for it regardless of who handles it. You have a responsibility to at least think proactively about what all the aftermath of a defensive encounter will entail, including the legal battle, the social battle, the ethics battle, the morality battle, the spiritual battle, personal relationships, all of those things. Just understand that none of that is immune from the effects of your having to use a firearm in self-defense. And yes, you can overcome all of that and be perfectly fine. It's 1000% doable and possible. Uh,
Mhm.
it's harder if you've not thought about it beforehand.
Yeah, I imagine it's hard even if you have. I
Absolutely,
mean
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know how helpful that was. I don't have anything super
Very.
concrete to say, but those
Yeah.
are my suggestions for preparing for the aftermath. But again, I can't say this enough. I'm sorry to beat a dead horse there, but the best way to prepare for the aftermath is to avoid it altogether.
Yeah, sounds like it because that's that's a lot. When
Yeah.
you really think about it, that's a lot. I mean, that just literally changes your life forever.
Yep.
So, all
It does.
right. Next question is, do gun stickers or gun clothing or social media posts hurt later in court, and what precautions should people take?
So I'm going to give you the most obnoxious lawyer answer ever, and that is it depends.
It depends.
That's a total non-answer. I get it, but unfortunately, that is the answer, because there's so many factors that weigh into that. If I had to give a blanket hardline statement one way or the other, I would say steer clear of that kind of thing. I don't do that. I don't use gun stickers and gun shirts and all that stuff. If you do, just keep it neutral. If you wear a Glock shirt, or if you wear a shirt that advertises a manufacturer or a vendor, that's pretty neutral. Where you get into trouble is wearing shirts like "Come and pry it from my cold dead hands,"
Mm.
or "I dare you cross this line," or
Right.
anything that comes across as hubris, or some sort of superiority complex, or anything that could be interpreted as eagerness to
Mm.
use your gun.
Mhm.
It makes me cringe when I see people that say that wear shirts that say things like, try it, I dare you, or something like that.
Mhm.
Now, how's that going to look when you get into a situation and you have to explain that in court? That is a prosecutor's best dream ever. Like, that is a
Mhm.
dream cross examination on any day. So keep it neutral and you're fine. And a lot of times people will say to me, "But I'm proud of my Second Amendment rights. I want to, I want to showcase it, and I want people to see that everybody is there's all kinds of walks of life who are in the Second Amendment community, and I support that. That's great. If you're concerned about it being turned against you in court later, my advice is keep it neutral. Keep it totally neutral."
That makes sense, and I think that's one of those things that a lot of people don't give much thought to.
Yeah.
And not just stickers and shirts, but social media posts as well.
And also things like, I've seen etchings on like dust covers and things like
Mhm.
that, and little embroidery on rifle bags and stuff
Mhm.
like, you know, and
Mhm.
people would put notes in Arabic on their rifle bag, and I'm like, come on. And then they get angry when people make assumptions about them. Well,
Mhm.
you know, I
Right.
mean, what, you know, what do you expect? The assumption might be wrong, but you did give people fodder to chew on. So I
Right.
would steer clear of anything that is inviting a misinterpretation of eagerness to
Yeah.
use your firearm. And that's like the welcome mats at home, you know, enter
Mhm.
at your own risk, protected by Smith and Wesson. Like,
Yeah.
you're literally telling people that you have guns in your house and you want them to come in so you can shoot them.
Yeah.
That's what a prosecutor's going to say. Steer
Right.
clear of all of that.
Right, it's not about what we think, it's about what a prosecutor is going to be able to prove.
That's
That's what
right.
really the bottom line is. Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
agree.
and Scott, you made a great comment about having, all of that on your car, then that's a likely you become a likely target for people
Theft.
thinking you have yeah, that you
Mhm.
have guns in your car. And for
Mhm.
me too, even like the way I dress, I really wanna look very unassuming in public. That is my
Same here.
goal. I
Same
want to
here.
blend in. I don't wanna stick out and look like a gun girl if I
Mhm.
can keep from it, and
That's
that's
right.
just my opinion.
I agree. I
I
agree.
see Adam put a couple of questions in here,
Mhm.
and I guess I'll put them up on the screen. Um, let's see. How do we Defenders USA con you into teaching a joint class with us in beautiful American West? And then wait, there's another one.
Wait,
Will
there's
you
more.
come out to Montana to teach with me, Laura, or teach a class if I, Laura, host it?
Absolutely, yes, and yes. I love the American West. It is beautiful. I so rarely get to go out there. Unfortunately, I will not be at the A Girl in the Guns conference this year. I'm really sad about that. But I just had my second surgery and I'm kind of
Oh,
grounded physically.
sure.
But I absolutely love it. It's beautiful. So I don't think it would take much conning at all to get me out there. Adam, I mean,
It
Laura.
is Montana. It is Montana, and I think you and I would have a blast, and
Yes,
I think we could do some really good things together. I just sense that. So,
I would love
I'm
it. I
all
would
for
love
it if you're all for it. I think it would be great.
all for it. Give me a couple of weeks to get this knee back in shape, and then I'm back on planes and back on the road.
Awesome. That's actually a really good idea, Adam. I know nobody else can see him. He's behind the scenes, but, um that's awesome. Let me see if there's anything else in the comments. We are actually, this is perfect timing because 'cause we're running right up on the hour. It's like I planned it that way or something.
You did, of course.
Yeah, I totally
You're
I
full
totally
pro.
knew what I was doing the whole time. Yeah. No, this was a great conversation, and you've been just so much fun to have on. You give such good information, but delivered in a way that's easy to understand, and that's a
You.
true talent that not a lot of people have. So I appreciate that so much, and, I hope that everyone watching got a lot out of that because I certainly did, and I appreciated the way that that was presented and delivered. And plus, I love your story too. That's a great story.
Thanks.
That I'm sure there's others out there that can relate to, how you felt and your just the whole thing. So anyway, thank you so much, Tiffany, for coming on. I do want to shout out here very quickly. Who we're going to have on next week. So, but I'm going to wrap up with you for now, Tiffany. And again, thank you so much. You've been a pleasure. And I hope we see each other again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invitation. This has been phenomenal. I appreciate
You
it.
bet. My pleasure. Okay, guys, so next week we're gonna have another fun girl on. I'm looking forward to this one. Oh, wait, I wrote this in my notes. I have to say this out loud because I'm excited, okay? So before I get into who's coming on next week, really quickly, I just want to thank all of you who have subscribed to the Defenders USA YouTube channel because we just surpassed a little milestone with the Defenders USA YouTube channel this week, and we are now over 1,000 subscribers. So I really want to keep that growing. So please go, if you are getting value out of what we're doing here, please go to Defenders USA YouTube channel, go to the Defenders Live YouTube channel. And hey, if you're already in that Defenders Live Facebook group, and you really enjoy what's being posted there, invite others to join that Facebook group, because that's a private group, but you can invite friends to join that if you know other people that would enjoy that content. So you can find us in multiple places, but anywhere that you're subscribing, please share it with others. We really want to get this information out to as many people as we can, and we so appreciate you watching. Now, next week, March 15th, we have on the smart and talented Natalie Widener, aka the Range Monkey. She will be joining us next week, and she is in the cohort with me with Active Self-Protection Instructor Certification right now. So I'm getting to know her pretty well, and I got to tell you, she has a heart of gold, and she is so bubbly and has just a wonderful personality, and is such a great shooter as well. So she is part of the Active Self-Protection team. And if you guys don't know what active self-protection is, go on YouTube and check it out. Active self-protection is a channel devoted to helping others develop the attitude, skills, and plan to better protect themselves. So that could mean a lot of things, and it's a very valuable place to go. And on the Active Self-Protection Extra channel, Natalie documents her firearms journey, and she shares her experiences and adventures as the range monkey on there, and also promotes gun safety and is a role model really for young shooters in the gun industry. So we're going to be speaking with Natalie next week. So get ready for that one, because she is a ball of fire. If you think I get wound up, you just wait, because it's going to be a fun show. I'm really looking forward to it. So we'll see you next week, Wednesday, 7 p.m. And I think it's not standard time. It's moving again, the daylight savings time thing, but it's 7 p.m. Mountain time, whatever that is, next week on Wednesday. We'll see you then. Until then,